Welcome to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 112 of the DFO Rundown, 1 week away from the NHL trade deadline. It has been very quiet, likely will be for a few days, and then things are going to heat up, and there's lots of different angles to look at. As I'm Jason Gregor, we welcome in Frank Saravalli, and Frank, here we are. The countdown is on. It's 1 week to go, and you know the West definitely has some teams who still think they're in. Some teams all of a sudden that need to quote Chandler Stevenson, grab their nuts and work harder. Vegas, losers of 4 in a row, 7 of their last 10. They got some key injuries. That's a fascinating team to see what they're going to do this week.
They have so much riding on it. I mean, it's not just, Stanley Cup or bust. This, got to get the Stanley Cup in 5 years, as their owner, Bill Foley, put out as the edict. But how do they overcome these injuries? And I mentioned this idea before. Maybe, you get a little help from someone like Riley Smith as a pending UFA, but this is the only year they're going to have the ability to really load up with all these guys if they can keep them healthy and be this far over the cap. Given the Mark Stone injury, it's a unique one-off situation. So the fact that that may be squandered, especially in the first year of the Jack Eichel experience, man, to have it come down potentially to goaltending, there's some pretty delicious irony in that, given that they traded the reigning Vezina Trophy winner away last summer for nothing.
Yeah, nothing. So, and Robin Lehner, you know what? Home on crutches. Who knows how long he'll be out for? So yeah,
sounds like a knee issue for Robin Lehner, actually.
Yeah, so that just adds to it.
On top of the shoulder, so you've got shoulder and knee. Yikes!
He'll be singing the song soon, Frank. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Right?
Yeah.
Pretty.
There you go.
Pretty banged up. Other play, of course, the Heritage Classic. Great venue in Hamilton. Buffalo just keeps knocking off the top dogs right now. And they get by Toronto 5-2. But of course, the story many are talking about, Auston Matthews has a hearing, not in person though, which kind of gives us a little foreshadowing on the length of the suspension. He's clearly getting suspended, I would think, for the cross-check to the side of Rasmus Dahlin. And Frank, I honestly think the fact that Dahlin didn't go down, that's helping Auston Matthews.
Not sure why it should matter. Like, you need to be in control of your emotions and your stick at all times. And if you watch the video closely, there's nothing, like, they're in a tussle, but there's nothing that Dahlin does that's really against the rules. He didn't use his stick. He simply pushed him with his arms. And I think it comes down to the totality of the circumstances, really the key. Tim Peel wrote about this on dailyfaceoff.com and gave his verdict of 2 games. It's late in a game that was supposed to be a memorable afternoon for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've given up their 4th goal in a game for the 10th time in their last 12 games. It's snowing, it's cold, the Leafs are frustrated, and Auston Matthews simply loses his cool. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is someone that should have been in more control and wasn't, and his emotions got the best of him. And, I think in that case, when it's a reactionary play like that, not a hockey play, not just something that happened in the sequence of a game where you had little time to react. Like, I think those types of plays deserve a more harsh suspension. And, I'd like to see it be a little bit more than that. I just don't think that there's enough precedent. And the fact that Auston Matthews has never been fined or suspended and was last year a Lady Byng finalist for gentlemanly play, he doesn't have the rap sheet to really throw the book at him.
No, I would agree. I think they've got 3 games this week, Frank. They have Dallas and Carolina at home, and then they play in Nashville. I think he's going to get 3 games. I think he gets the week.
So what what makes me curious about that is not necessarily how that impacts the Leafs. How does that impact the Rocket Richard race? Well, what if he ends up losing the Rocket Richard based on the 3 games missed? He's got a 6-goal lead over Leon Draisaitl, 7 over Chris Kreider, but still 3 games for Leon Draisaitl. He could easily score 6 and 3 or be close to it, knock on the door. What you've done is you've opened the door.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I would hope that player safety is not worrying about that, but it does impact it for sure. And so, you look at the way the Leafs are playing right now, like Austin Matthews being their best player. That's not even up for debate, right? He's in the conversation for having the best season this year, no question. So you lose him for 3 games or 2 games, whatever it's going to be. Like maybe it's more than 3. Definitely don't see it being more than 5 because it's not in person. So that was a pretty vicious cross check. And he clearly just, had a brief moment of frustration and he let it get the best of him. And now we'll see what the consequences are. But
as Gary Bettman said, when Rocky Wirtz had his eruption, he was just having a moment.
yeah, a little bit different, but yeah, you're right.
He used every piece of his body, every fiber of his body to leverage himself to cross check him in the face. And
he didn't. Hey man, is Dahlin that tough or what? Because he didn't even really budge. Because
Dahlin's a big dude.
Oh, he is a big dude. And I honestly think that helps Matthews. Because if the guy goes down, Frank, and you're right, it shouldn't matter. But I firmly believe it
always does.
Because it changes the perception.
Yeah. It always comes down to, was the player injured on the play? And the answer is no.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing is you look at teams. We have a lot of head-to-head games coming up. We saw last night Minnesota and Nashville go at it, and the Preds move into a tie now with them. The West playoff race, Frank, is what's fascinating. Vegas is technically in on points, but Dallas has 4 games in hand. They're only a point behind them. They're obviously going to pass them this week. And I look at
points
Vegas
percentage, my man. Vegas is outside of a playoff spot.
Yeah, well, you look at the LA Kings, though. So the LA Kings are banged up. They get spanked by San. They actually lose in overtime to the Sharks. Then they lose 5-0. Then they got to fly home. They play one of the top teams in the NHL, Florida. And Martin Ferk ties the game on an absolute bomb slap shot with 30 seconds remaining. Then they win in a shootout. You talk about a game where their season could have teetered one way due to injuries and starting to lose 3 in a row, and they beat Florida. Man, I'll give the LA Kings a lot of credit for last night's gutsy win over the Panthers.
Yep. And has anyone ever been happier than the Edmonton Oilers and Vancouver Canucks for this slide from the Vegas Golden Knights? I mean, I mentioned it last week. I don't think that either of those 2 teams are going to be able to catch Nashville or Dallas. I mean, it's possible. Certainly Dallas has, they don't have a ton of wiggle room, but geez, Vegas was the team that they kind of needed to fall back, and they've certainly done so. And, you look at all the injuries, it kind of went unnoticed on Sunday, but no Max Pacioretty again for the Vegas Golden Knights. They might have $40+ million sitting on the shelf. They're ripe for the picking. They just are.
No, the 100%. And you look at the Edmonton Oilers, really, since Jay Woodcroft came in, their 5-on-5 play has improved tenfold how much better they are. If they can figure out their power play, which I still think, because you have Draisaitl McDavid, it'll figure itself out. I think the Oilers are a playoff team, and I think they're going to give LA a run for second. But Vegas is going to be in trouble, no question. They're going to have to really battle.
Do we need to sound the alarm for Pete DeBoer and his job security? I mean, I don't know if you saw his quotes after the game last night. We've got to stop the bleeding. There's urgency. We know the situation. I mean, at some point, isn't this traditionally, maybe not for a team that had so many injuries, but isn't this traditionally the type of swoon that ends up costing a coach's job?
Very possible, man. Very possible. It could be. And I wonder, does the goalie injury give him wiggle room, right? Because if you bring in a new coach and you have the same goaltending issues, is it going to change? You look at their week, Frank. Look at the week Vegas has.
Look at the Oilers. Their goaltending situation didn't change. They got some better goaltending from Mikko Koskinen, but how much of that was as a result of the stylistic 5-on-5 changes?
That's fair. That's totally valid. Yeah, that could be part of it. Vegas, they got Winnipeg tomorrow in Winnipeg. Then they're home to Florida, home to LA. That's a huge week for them leading up to the trade deadline. And then they come out of it and they play next Monday, Tuesday, Thursday against Minnesota, Winnipeg, and Nashville. Not teams that they're necessarily battling in the Pacific, but teams they're all battling for a potential wild card berth. Like this next 6 games could really be a make or break when they got 5 of them against teams they're battling for in the playoff race. And then, oh, by the way, one of the best teams in the league in Florida.
So you've got Laurent Brossoit and Logan Thompson in net. Are they getting the job done?
Oof. It's tough, man. Well, hey, Chandler Stevenson and all the players, I think you're right. The guys in front of them are going to have to help out, no question. But it's fascinating. Like, you wonder, let's say they lose to Winnipeg. Like, do you make a coaching change with 20 games to go?
I would have to think that given their mantra and given their mission, that everything would be on the table.
Ooh.
I mean, wouldn't missing the playoffs not be an option? For them, probably more than some other teams.
Yeah, fair. I agree. Like, it's the first time in franchise history that they've been in a playoff race where their lives are on the line.
Well, I would say not only that, but the way this team is built, they're not young.
No.
Like, they're not the Oilers that are building towards something. They're at that championship contender window and have been for a couple of years now. And they frankly have mortgaged a lot of their future to be there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they're in a tough spot for McCrimmon. Like, you kind of got, your chips are already in, Frank. Now it's down to you can't pull your chips out.
One would think, but so let's flip back to the Vegas of the East and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Should they consider doing nothing? See, I floated this idea, and the more I think about it, the more I think there's logic to it. Like, they've got so many holes in goal, on their blue line. They really need another winger up front. That's a lot to fill with a team that, if Jake Muzzin's coming back, doesn't have any cap space. Plus, you could make the best moves possible. You could attempt to fill all those holes and do it admirably, and still just as easily lose to the Florida Panthers in the first round.
True, but I think the argument would be that if we fill our holes, we could easily beat those teams and go to the Cup.
What would be no matter what, even if they were to fill those holes, they're entering as the underdog to either Tampa or Florida. And today it would be Tampa.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not ideal, right? Like,
what kind of confidence level, even if they're able to make trades and really do it well, what kind of confidence level would you give them to beat either one of those teams in a 7-game series and actually have to beat both of them in consecutive 7-game series?
Well, I think Florida has about the same amount of playoff success as the Leafs, right? Based on the players they have in their squads. So, both of those organizations are looking to end a lengthy drought of just winning a series. So I think in a perfect world, you'd much rather face them in the first round to gain some confidence. Because if you face Tampa, who's just, Tampa's got so many battle scars, they'll be immune to anything. There'll be no nerves for Tampa. And I think there might be for Toronto. So they'd probably be better off.
You really think there's some for Florida?
A little. Well, they haven't won anything, Frank. They haven't won a playoff series since '96.
Right, but how many of those guys is Reinhart wearing that?
Barkov and
Bennett wearing that?
Barkov, Huberdeau, and Ekblad, kind of their 3 main guys. What playoff success have they had?
None, but they haven't really had a supporting cast until now.
Yeah. No,
so
that's fair.
How much are they really sitting there sweating it? And by the way, they're in Florida. No one's breathing down their necks like the Toronto market is.
Yeah, but I do think inside the room, there's the internal pressure to want to win, right? Like, I think Florida feels like, hey, we got to get going here. Like, at some point, we got to take the regular season results and transfer that into playoff success, right? Like, obviously, you're right. The fans and the media coverage are very different in the two markets, but I think the internal pressure would be the exact same.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's more riding on it for the Leafs than there is for the Panthers.
And that might be the media coverage. I would agree with you. But I think in the room, like, you look at Florida, man, like, you only have so many good chances. Like, Florida's got a really good team. Like, and I think
Which is why I give them the edge already. Like, I just think they're a better constructed team than the Leafs at this point.
Well,
given what we know about their goaltending, given what we know about their blue line. And I still think Florida is going to be in a position. They're going to be getting stronger too. It's not like they're going to stay the same. I'd be very surprised if they don't go out and get a defenseman over the next 7 days.
No, that's what I was going to say. D-man they add a defenseman to that team.
Hampus Lindholm.
Yeah, that's the guy. Okay. What are you hearing on Chychrun? Is he out now of the trade sweepstakes because of the injury potentially?
We're still waiting for an update on Jakob Chychrun to see the severity of his injury. Me personally, I think it's been somewhat quiet on Jakob Chychrun compared to the noise that was out there. I would, I don't know how the injury is going to impact it, but I would tend to be more surprised than not if he ends up getting traded over the next week.
To me, it never made sense. Why, if you're Arizona, why are you trading Jakob Chychrun? I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Now, the Los Angeles Kings are a team that could be looking to make some moves this week, Frank. And we got the president, the Hall of Famer, Luc Robitaille, joining us on the DFO Rundown. Today on the DFO, we are excited to welcome a Hockey Hall of Famer. He was the 171st overall pick back in 1984. He was the first and only Rookie of the Year as a member of the Los Angeles Kings. He's a Hall of Famer. Of course, he is the current all-time left winger leading scorer in NHL history, although Ovi is closing in on that mark. And of course, 22nd all-time in points. He was voted one of the top 100 players of all time in NHL history, and he's the president of the Los Angeles Kings. Luc Robitaille joins us. Luc, it's quite the resume. How you doing?
I wrote that perfectly for you. I could have had a couple things about the life and everything, but
oh yeah, no, hey, that's all right. Hey, you can add some of the life stuff. I like it. Now, Luc, I'm very excited to have you on here because I have a freakish memory about weird things. And back in 1994, it was my brother's 24th birthday, and we were going out, and that day there was a massive trade in the NHL in the summer of July 1994. Luc Robitaille traded from LA to the Pittsburgh Penguins. You had the fourth most points in your first 8 seasons in the NHL, the third most goals. That was a blockbuster. As we're into trade season, were you surprised? Take me back as to what led up to you being traded for Rick Tocchet in the summer of 94.
I would say, what I was surprised is that summer I went and played for Team Canada, the World Championship, and we won. And we won the gold medal, and I scored in a shootout. And as I'm on the ice, and we got a trophy. My son was there. It was kind of neat because it was in Italy, and then the first interview that I did on the ice, where some press came, it was some European press. The guy says, "Hey, congratulations, Wing. What do you think about the rumors about you going to get traded?" I was telling him, I was flabbergasted, and so that was the first time I had heard about it. And then later in the summer, I heard a few. We still had an owner, Bruce McNall, who was struggling. There was a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with the LA Kings, where he ended up going to prison and so forth. But he had told me that there were a couple things. Some I think were money oriented and so forth. And hey, it's part of the game, I mean, I always say, if Wayne Gretzky got traded, we can all get traded.
and so that became, you got traded, I think it was 3 summers out of 4, because you got traded in 94. Then the summer of 95, after only 1 year in Pittsburgh, you get traded to New York. And then in the summer of 97, you're traded from New York back to LA. Those are the only trades of your career, and it all happened in a short period of time. Did it ever get easier? Did you ever ask for one of those trades, the last 2?
No, the next one, when I left Pittsburgh, it had everything to do with money. Howard Baldwin was the owner, who was a really nice man. I'm still friends with him. And due to the lockout we had that year, financially, the organization was in trouble. And at the time, like you said, I had really good numbers. So because they had changed, in those days, I don't know if you recall, we had option years and so
yeah.
Because the lockout that year, when the settlement was done, if you had an option year, you had the option to get out of the option year. Oh. And for me to get out of the option year meant that my arbitration case was the best case in hockey. So my agent says, Luke, we're going to take you out, and we'll file for arbitration. We'll see. And Howard Baldwin says, well, Mario's coming back next year because he was hurt, and they weren't going to be able to match the salary if what they thought it could be. So that's how I ended up going to New York. And so I kind of knew something was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be New York, but I knew I was not going to stay in Pittsburgh. And then going back to LA, it had everything to do where Neil Smith actually treated myself and my family really good. I wasn't used to not playing as many minutes in here, and I loved it. I loved playing with Mess, and it was a fun team. And at some point, Neil, I think he had talked to some of the coaching staff and said, look, if you're not going to play him that many minutes, we're paying him too much money for that. So he made a trade. He told me, he says, I know LA wants you back. He goes, if I have a chance to send you there, I will. So I kind of had a feeling it was going to happen. So we're pretty fortunate that we had like people that were really honest on the management side that communicated with us, so it was never a surprise.
Interesting. Luc, I wanted to bring it, I know it's trade season, bring it back to your team and the success that you guys have enjoyed this season. And I think, obviously watching so closely, with what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, to kind of take a step back and look at the growth from this team, to see the individual sort of steps that some of these players have taken to get better, some of the young guys. What's it been like watching that up close every day?
Well, it's been really fun to see our young guys playing. I mean, I don't know how much you watch our team, but even watching our team in Ontario, it's just a lot of fun to see all the kids progressing. But we're certainly learning that it does take patience, and you've got to be ultra patient, and you can't get too emotional. But I think the biggest thing that's been really good is to see our team as a group buying into a system and then playing that way. It seems like almost every night. Like, it's kind of funny. This week we've had like 4 injuries in the span of like 3 days. And then last night you kind of could see, it's not like you're losing your identity, but everybody's trying to get back into playing the way we've had success lately. So hopefully that, some of those guys don't miss too much time, but to see those young guys coming in and seeing their next step, and our development guys like Matt Green, Sean O'Donnell, and Mike Donnelly, and so forth, and Jared Stoll, they really work on making sure they're playing to help us win, not just to get to the NHL. So it's been fun to see the progress some of those young men.
So you guys are firmly in a playoff spot, injuries notwithstanding, and we know what the season's been like, especially in the Pacific for a number of teams. But where would you say you're at in terms of the process? You've been building to get to this point for a couple years. How close are you to where you want to get to, and how much room for growth is there still?
Well, last summer when the season ended, Rob Blake said we're done with the selling part, and now we're going the other way. And, our veterans were excited about that. And, we added Philip Deneau and Arvidsson and Edler. And these guys have come in and really bought into what we're trying to do. So we're on the next step. So we always said we were going to compete for a playoff spot. You never know how you're going to end up at the end. It does depends of, you got to get a couple breaks, injuries, and so forth. But you got to keep playing the same way a long time. And, we know the growth of our players. And if you look at a trajectory, like Adrian Kempe is having his best year, and he's 25. So we've liked him as a player. Like 2-3 years ago, we have a lot of players that are like there where he was 2-3 years ago. So we could see the potential. So it does tell us in a couple of years, we really feel we're going to compete like every night, and we're going to start the season where we say, okay, we're a playoff team. What do we need to do to add? But right now we're still competing to get in, and that's the hardest part.
To compete to get in, your best players got to be your best players most nights, Luc. And Drew Doughty has, I know because he missed some games and a lot of time, he won't get considered, but he's playing back close to his Norris Trophy level. Were you expecting this? Was he playing banged up at all the last few years, or what has he done to get back to this elite level?
I think it's funny, like a guy like Drew Doughty loves to compete, and it has to mean every game needs to be, he plays with so much emotion that I think it was really hard for him to play on a team that, by the time you hit Christmas, you almost were out. And I don't think it works with his DNA. For him, it's like you put him on the Olympic team at 18 years old, he's the best D. He starts as a 7D and ends up being the top 2D. And it just, whenever there's competition, he gets better. And I just think this year our team's better. And Drew's like, okay, let's go. And he suddenly is, you could, if you watch him every day and you see what he's doing both sides, you'd say, yeah, he's probably the best D in the league or top 3 for sure this year. And that's who he is, though. He needs to have a team that competes with him.
So when he comes back and you have Anze Kopitar, who's been ultra consistent, but you played a long time, and I know you weren't a center, Luc, but you understand the responsibilities of a center. How much has the addition of Phillip Danault lessened the responsibilities of Kopitar and maybe allowed him not to be so worn down and having to play every tough matchup?
Yeah, we still play him a lot, but but you're right. I think it's been a huge addition to have Phillip play with Kopi, because now suddenly you go to Boston and Danault could play against Bergeron one shift, and then it's Kopi, and even taking faceoffs, we're able to put Kopi in way more offensive faceoffs than in the past, and I think that takes a lot of pressure. Like right now, he's not jumping first on every PK all the time. We're able to put Danault, and even the kid Lazat's kind of been stepping in, and long term, that's going to really help us. I mean, he's such a great player, so for us to buy a little bit of time like that, it gives us a better opportunity offensively to score more goals.
This will ultimately be Rob's decision, I guess, Luc, but in terms of how you navigate this deadline, keeping the big picture in mind, how do you, put your team in the best position to succeed now and also keep an eye on the future in terms of, potentially making a move to make this team better in the next week or so?
Yeah, I think for us, there's no knee-jerk movement. It's very important. If we have a chance, I think Rob has said since the beginning, if we have a chance to improve the team, we will. So he's taking calls from everyone. He's talking to everyone. We're one of the few teams with cap space, and we have cap space coming up. So we're aware of it. It has to be that we can improve the team. I mean, Alex Edler is going to come back now, and, hopefully in the next 3 weeks. So that's, so if you're going to make an addition on D, he already got one coming back. So we're looking at all that and to see, but if there's a chance to improve the team, absolutely we'll do it. We understand, and our players have earned that whenever we can do to make the team and the organization better, we will. That being said, it could be a young guy coming up, that can really help you and make a big difference. We saw that in 2012, we called up Dwight King and Jordan Nolan. They kind of brought like a lot of, a little bit of spark to our organization. They ended up, Kinger played on the third line and was really good in the playoffs. So sometimes it happens that way also.
How would you describe your role for those that don't know the day-to-day for you? Like, you're president of hockey and business ops, you're overseeing it all. How do you split your time between the two? Is it all intertwined? What's your day-to-day like?
Make sure the team wins and make sure we don't lose too much money. No, it's it's intertwined. There's a lot of communication. Like I talk a lot with Rob Blake, and then on the business side, I talk a lot with Kelly Cheeseman, our COO, and we're really trying to focus on making sure, like, people forget, like, technically you have 11 teams in LA, pro teams, and then you could throw in USC and UCLA to consider in football pro teams also. And so we're always competing for relevance and so forth. You got to be a little bit different. So for us, it was not an easy thing to say 2.5 years ago, we're going to rebuild, because you're basically telling your fans it's going to be hard now, like, really, bear down with us. But our fans, our core fans, bought in. And now they're seeing like the light at the end of the tunnel. But it's so my job is, we'll spend some time, a lot of discussion. The hockey decision or discussion are mostly in the morning. And then most of the afternoon, I would say I spend a lot of time on the business side with our group. Yeah, that's kind of all my time is.
So in those hockey conversations now, Luke, as Frank's alluded to, we're getting very close to the NHL trade deadline. And based on your experience of trades and being traded, and you talked about how everybody was open and honest with you. How important do you feel that is as your organization? Like, if you're contemplating deals, do you tell some guys they might be traded, or can you do that during the season where it's different maybe than in an off season?
I think it's hard, because you really never know. Sometimes you think something's going to happen and it just doesn't happen at the end. And then like 3 weeks later, you hear a rumor of a guy moving, but that went by, like that rumor maybe 3 weeks ago. So I think it's not fair. Now, there's some players that's different than other players. I think every situation is so different. Now, the good thing that we have is, I don't know how much you guys know about Rob Blake, but I always say there's no gray in his life. So it's either black or white. He tells you the way things are. So if you ask him, he'll tell you. And I think players, that's why they respect him so much, because he'll tell them exactly the way it is and so forth. So we're trying to be as far as we can with our organization. But if there were rumors and so forth about a player and there's nothing we could say, I think he would just tell them there's nothing we could say, because that's just the way it is. Now, if you have an opportunity to talk with a guy and treat people good, it's important. It's still a human business. It's hard on players' mind, their wives and their families when you hear rumors. So if you have a chance to really talk to them, we're well aware, because we all played, how much that carries, with your day-to-day lifestyle.
So, Luke, for you, when you're evaluating guys, you were a high offensive player. Do you still gravitate more to the offensive game, or have you spent more time do you like evaluating the defenseman because you're like, hey, I know how to beat a defenseman? Kind of when you're looking at players, what do you feel is your best skill set as an evaluator of talent?
I want to look for heart, guys that love the game. I'm a big fan of guys that love the game. They're willing to do whatever it takes to help you win. Doesn't mean they're going to be good every day. They're going to screw up and so forth. But if you find the right guy that just, it's got a little bit of spark that you could just tell, like when the game is there, they'll do whatever it takes to win. I mean, you're going to win a lot of games as an organization that way. And, I'll know sometimes how our offensive guys think. So when we'll have those discussions we'll talk about it. As far as defensemen, the way I look at it, I always look at a D and say, I wouldn't have liked to play against him. so I'll tell Blakey, I'll say, like, that guy, I wouldn't have liked to play against him because of X, Y, and Z. Sometimes, whether they're a great skater or a dirty player, or they make you pay a price for everything you win. So I kind of look at it like that a lot of times,
What are those conversations like between you and Rob? There's lots of guys that work together in front offices now that used to be teammates. Doesn't mean they necessarily all see the game the same way, but is there a little bit of a different relationship or vibe with you and Rob, given how, long you guys have known each other and had enjoyed success on the ice?
I think, that we have a bunch of guys in the room, Nelson Emerson, Glenn Murray, and now Marc Bergevin is there. And I think we might have different opinions and so forth, but we all have the same vision, and we're all on the same, it was interesting because we were hiring someone the other day in our organization on the business side, and it was a lady. And when we ended up hiring her, she said one of the main reasons she wanted to come is because everybody spoke the same language. And then it got me thinking that when you go on the hockey side right now, if you talk to any one of our guys that's in our office, like, everybody speaks the same language. And I think as an organization, if you want to get somewhere, you all have to be on the same path. Give me
an example of what that means.
So I could give you the easiest example is 2017. We didn't trade any picks. We didn't get rid of any picks from 2017 till 2000. I think 2 years ago, we traded a pick to move up on the draft. Okay. So no matter how emotional we got, or no matter what was going to happen, that was not going to happen. Then you get to the next time, and we look at a player and say, well, okay, this player is not producing as much. Maybe he should move down. But then we always go back to the way we want to play. What we've talked about, like in the summer, this is how we see our team, with the type of character, and so we don't get emotional over day to day. Now, that probably that has a lot to do with our ownership group, that they're not emotional. They understand that we have a plan, we're going to stick to it. So then you go down to it. We always want to go back to the basic, the way we started and what goal we set out for the organization.
So then you said with regards to this upcoming deadline, no knee-jerk reaction. So
Yeah.
You've sort of thought this out in terms of not necessarily exactly what's going to happen, but you have an idea of what you'd like to accomplish. So when you think of someone like Danault, who we just talked about, how long in advance would someone like that, meaning not just that player, but stylistically, you mentioned the things you look for, hard and things like that. How would he have been an archetype of a type of player that you would have been thinking of for that spot 6 months, 12 months before you actually go out and get the deal done?
His compete, yes. I mean, it wasn't, I couldn't tell you. We did watch him. We knew he was going to become a free agent last year. And then when we ended the season last year, we were clear because of the way the growth of our prospect is coming. At the time, we set out to say we need 2 top 6 forwards. We weren't sure if it was going to be a center and a winger or 2 wingers. We knew it was never going to be 2 centers, but we knew if we had a chance to a center and a winger. Now, it's hard to add 2 top 6 forwards in free agency. So when Blakey had the opportunity to get Arvidsson early on in the summer, he jumped at it. So now suddenly we only had to get 1 more guy. And that's when we started doing work on, every other, wingers that were available. And, then there wasn't a lot of centers that were available. Like Danault was one of them. And when, talking with our scouts, looking at the data and looking at the type of team we want to be, it just seemed to be the right fit. But we still weren't sure what we're going to get him. You really never know. That's why free agency is hard. You got to be a little bit lucky too. You got to be ready early, and you got to be a little bit lucky.
I like how you mentioned that, because you can come in with the best plan, Luc, and you want to stay on plan. When do you know? Is it a gut feel on when you might have, okay, well, this is our plan, but maybe it's 6 months ahead, or maybe some team's going to surprise you here in the final week and there's an offer that you might have said, hey, it's a little bit beforehand. How much, now that you're past the point of we're definitely not sellers, does it change? And sometimes you just got to go with you trust your gut to know that we might not be able to follow our path and timeline exactly. There might be opportunities where we have to jump ahead of it.
Well, we know if we had an opportunity, I think Blakey came out, I think it was last summer. He said, if we have an opportunity to get a defenseman younger than 25, 26, that could play the next 6-7 years with us, we would look at it. So he's made that clear. And
like Jacob Chychrun.
Well, I don't know, how old is he?
Yeah.
Well, wait, I was laughing, Luc, when I heard that comment last summer, I was like, yeah, you and all 31 other teams are trying to do that.
Yeah. The difference is we have a lot of prospect. We have a lot of, you could call them assets. And fortunately or unfortunately for us, sometimes it's, you can't have, if you have like whatever, 20 assets, they can't all play for your team. And to be fair, they need a chance to play in the NHL. So, at some point that's going to happen. It's just the way it is. I mean, I remember Dean Lombardi made a huge trade for us to get Mike Richards, but we had to give up Wayne Simmons and Braden Shen, and those were, really good hockey players. And you look back, we won 2 Stanley Cups, and that was the right trade. But Braden Shen's had a great career, so did Wayne Simmons, and that's the way it is sometimes in hockey.
And that's, I think, the balancing point for the Kings. And I love that you brought it up, because you do have a lot of the prospects. Is there sleepless nights? Because some of them you really like, and we like this guy, and we like that guy, and then you got to hope, because sometimes you got to give to get something. You're right. You're not going to be able to trade all our bad prospects, and then we're going to get all these great players. That's fantasy trades, right? So is that going to be the toughest decisions, Luc, maybe in the next year or so for this organization, is knowing which of the assets to move confidently, knowing that we're not going to give away necessarily the best one.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. But But if you want to get a player you really like, you're gonna have to give up a good player. That's just the way it is. It's just there's no way you can't steal anything. It's just everybody has the data, everybody knows about each player. So you just got to be ready for that and see. It becomes more about fitting a hole. So if you're giving up a forward or a certain position for a defenseman, does he help your team more now than the other guy? And that's all it is. And for the player, is it better for him to really get a chance to play somewhere? I clearly remember we were having talk about when Mike Richard came and wanted to talk with someone talking to me, says, well, if Braden Shen becomes successful, he'll play like Mike Richards. And if you look at today, that's kind of who Braden Shen is. And he won a Stanley Cup, so they were right. It's just that we ended up winning 2 and we could have won 3, so that was the right move, but that's the way it is.
All right, let's play a little rapid fire.
All right, Luke. So in rapid fire, the only rule is you have to answer the questions. All right. So
all right. What if I don't know?
Well, that's true. I'll try. Come on, our questions are never going to be that in depth, I wouldn't think. So we'll start with some of the easy ones. I want to go back to your draft year. Is it true the Kings were the only team that talked to you prior to the draft?
Yeah, it was actually one scout. His name was Alex Smart. Yeah.
Only because you were at back then it's a 9th rounder, but 171st. When everybody said, well, we're not sure about his skating, how did you deal with that as a young player?
They actually said he's slower than a Zamboni. That's what I did ask my dad one time. I think I was like 13 or 14 years old. I asked my dad, is it true that I'm really slow? Like when you he goes, I don't know, son. He said, all I know is when there's a loose puck, you seem to be first on it. You keep doing what you do. I said, okay. But I do at 14, I bought the first pair of rollerblades. There was a friend of mine that was they had just come out, and that's all I would do all summer because everybody would always talk about my skating. So I try to improve didn't work that much because they kept saying my whole career. But that was one scout.
Well, hey man, hopefully that guy, you bought him a beer later because he should buy you a beer because it definitely worked out.
He got Steve Duchesne as a free agent. So we went and got him a couple presents a few years later. He passed away now, but pretty special man, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, you said you heard that your whole career, and it's true. So what made you so successful despite not being fast?
I think my love for the game, and because I had so much passion, I try to learn every day. I'll give you an example. I would watch a player that was really hot in the NHL, and then I'd watch him because I wasn't a great skater, maybe not as strong. I'd say, okay, I can't do these 10 things he's doing great, but I can do that one thing. So then I would go and practice that for maybe the next month. And next thing you know, that would add that to my game, what I was doing. So if I would watch the way Brett Hall shot a puck, I couldn't shoot the way he did. There's a lot of stuff he was doing because his skill level was high. But I noticed the way he was positioning himself on the ice. A lot of guys are on the one-timer right on the dot. He was maybe a couple feet off. So I picked that up and I started doing it on the other side. That would help me. So I was always trying to learn and study the game. I was a good student.
What was the number one thing you learned playing with Gretzky when he first came to LA?
Give it to him. My game 3 in the NHL, I was going a 2-on-1 with Wayne, and that was my idol. I just wanted, it's to another level, my idol, so I wanted to give him the perfect saucer pass, and he comes back to and it got caught in the middle. So he comes back to the bench, and he's being really nice. He's freaking Wayne Gretzky. He's getting 200. He goes, hey, Lucky. He goes, just give it to me. He goes, don't worry, I'll give it back to you. And I was like, okay, Mr. Gretzky. That was my thing. So for the next, I think month, every time I touch a puck, I just fired it at him. So finally, I remember Robbie Fitarik says, you can't play with Wayne. I'm going to play you with someone else. You need to calm down. And I was like, really? I was so disappointed. But that's how I started because I was just a kid and Gretzky was I idolized it.
Well, I appreciate your honesty because I think some people forget, for offensive players, Gretzky was the guy. And then to be that young, And then to get to play with them, even if you try to tell yourself, don't be in awe, don't try to get him the puck, you can't do it. Like you just, oh, there's 99. I got to get him the puck.
No, we had like everybody in LA, like just coming after every game, even before game, just looking at him. Like people we'd seen in movie, we had never seen that. So he was definitely above, like way above what we were.
What's Luc Robitaille's cocktail of choice after a big win or just a random night in the summer?
Oh, cocktail of choice. I really like the wine Prisoners lately. I really like that wine.
Okay.
I'll go for a Bud Light too.
Now, early in your career, you were in awe of you going to Gretzky. Late in your career, of course, you won your Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings, and there was a boatload of Hall of Famers. What was the number one? Why was Luc Robitaille, the veteran, able to fit into that group so easily?
I mean, it was a lot of us. I think it's going to be, when it's all said and done, 11 Hall of Famers on that team. We will probably never see that again. I think that the biggest thing is we all had done a lot in our career, and everyone that went there, we were, and don't care, like Steve Eisenman, Chris Draper, Chelio, Shanahan, these guys had won already. So they already knew that it takes a real group to win. You can't do it individually. So for me, it was great to suddenly be just part of a group. Okay. So whenever I would go on the ice, I had to do my job. And then I knew when I was going to come off the other guys were going to do their job. And it was easy to trust the other guys because everybody was so good. But it really helped me even for my transition to post-career, where you really, that's when you realize it takes everyone to have, whether it's a successful show, a successful team, and so forth. But that was the biggest thing for me, is to learn to really be part of the group and just do your job, and good things will happen at the end.
Earlier, you mentioned sometimes you'll tell Blake, hey, you know what? That defenseman, I wouldn't want to play against him. So which defenseman did you hate playing against when you played?
Well, Chelly is the worst, because it's not like he hits you hard, because Chelly was not big, but if you won if you won a puck in the corner, he would slash you for the next 3 games because he lost them. He was crazy. He wanted to win every single thing. So if you beat him too bad, he would just keep at you. It's almost like he had to go 5-1 against you. So he was a real pain in the butt that way, which makes him great.
How are your card playing skills? Are you a good card player?
I play a little bit. I just do charity poker tournaments here and there, but not real good. Why?
No, I was just curious. When you were on the were you a card shark in your careers with your teammates?
No, not really. The guys play. I when we'd fly, I like to watch movies, so I'd watch movies.
Give me your top 2 movies to watch.
Top 2 movies. Well, one of them is definitely Shawshank Redemption, and then since I retire, because my whole life is hockey. So when I come home, my wife would tell you I like the chick flicks.
Little rom-com.
I cry many times in many of those movies.
Oh, okay. Little rom-com. I like it. Now, before I let you go, I have to ask you this. Did you watch Lance et Comte growing up as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Who was your favorite character?
Oh, God, I couldn't remember his name, but was it the guy that it was rumored that he was Guy Lafleur? So it was the star of the show. It was rumored.
Oh, Marc Gagnon.
Yeah, Marc Gagnon. Yeah. But wait a minute. Did you ever watch The Boys?
Yes, I watched The Boys.
That's a great show.
Oh, buddy, I love it, Frank. I don't know if you've seen. These are some classic Lance et Comte. I was a teenager at the time it came out, and as He Shoots, He Scores. They translated to English, but Lance et Comte was about this pro hockey team in Quebec.
Yeah,
it was pretty good, actually.
It was like a soap opera around hockey. It was good, but my favorite was those movies, The Boys.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. I always wish one day someone will make those movies in English, because they were really good.
The Boys are great. Yeah, see, because I graduated French immersion high school, so I watched a lot of the French shows. And Lance et Comte, I'm telling you, as a young guy, as a teenager, Susie Lambert, I had a huge crush on her as a kid.
That's right.
Luc, I have one last rapid fire for you. Give me one word of what it's like to be on the other side of the table from Pat Brisson in a negotiation.
One word. Fun.
Perfect.
I love what Pat, like, I never realized that Pat Brisson's players, they're all the greatest players to ever play the game. All of them, you know?
Perfect. I thought you were going to say scary. I wasn't sure what word you were going to pick.
It's fun because when he talks to me about a player, I'm like, so he's the greatest too, huh? Like they're all the greatest.
He's a good, hey, everybody needs a hype man like Pat Brisson, it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Luc, thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck in what's likely going to be a hectic, exciting week around the National Hockey League leading up to the trade deadline.
Yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, for us, we got to keep battling.
That was the president, Luc Robitaille. We appreciate him joining us. He joined us over the weekend, and obviously we'll be pretty excited today after that huge win last night against the Florida Panthers. Frank, and I really enjoyed that conversation with Luc because he was very forthright and honest in kind of what their plan is and where they're at and where they're going to move forward as an organization.
Such an exciting team. Like, I think they've got so much going for them between their cap space, their picks, their prospects. That team's going to be really good for the next 5-6 years. I made the comparison, and I truly believe they are the New York Rangers of the West. Like they're in an enviable position from now on. And just listening to Luc Robitaille, you can kind of pick out little details, even though he didn't reveal a lot of specifics. Something like, well, what are you looking for? And his response was players with heart.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the interview and replaying it back in my mind over the weekend. And like, I can't help but think that someone that fits that description so perfectly at this trade deadline is Brandon Hagel. Like, could you imagine slotting him on the left side and then properly, redoing your lines? You push Trevor Moore down a line. You still have Alex Iafallo there. And throw Hagel on a line with Philip Deneau, like your team becomes that much better. And you've got to his point with the prospects you have, and this is the same thing, the Rangers, the Sens, a lot of teams that have a deep pipeline, they're going to face is that not all these guys can make your lineup. So you're going to have to move guys anyway at some point. So this year is as good as any. Like we just talked about sort of what a hot mess the West is. Like, why can't the LA Kings go on a run? Why can't they? What would stop them from, squaring off with a team like Calgary and going toe to toe?
I think the health of Drew Doughty is a key thing, right? Once he comes back in, he's been unbelievable this season for the Los Angeles Kings. And I really like Luc's response about Drew Doughty. He said, you know what? Like, Drew, you can't fake who you are. And he's so emotionally invested that, when his team's out of it, he's just not playing. Now, some people might get frustrated listening to that. I kind of appreciate it because I can understand it. It wasn't like he quit, but it's just the difference between, being dialed in at a 9 or sometimes you go through the motions. I think that's the difference, Frank. And a lot of people, it's such a fine line in the NHL. And if you don't have that drive that you're normally possessing because your team is way out of it, I could see how maybe you're not going to be as effective.
Well, the juice just isn't the same. And when you have experienced the ultimate success and won 2 Stanley Cups and been in the hunt, when you're out of it by November or December and there's no chance to get back in, how could you? It's human nature. I mean, I know everyone has pride, everyone competes, everyone's making a lot of money, but at the same time, you have to manufacture that energy every night, and it's just impossible to do. I thought it was honest and fair. And also, to me, some people, as you said, might cast a shadow on Drew Doughty for that. To me, I kind of love it. Like, I'm like, if you have a team that's even close to the mix, you're going to be getting the absolute best out of Drew Doughty. And we saw it even just to start this year. You dangle a little carrot, the idea of making the Olympic team, and you see a different player. And, again, some people might say, why isn't that switch flipped on all the time? I just like that he has the ability to do so.
Yeah. And let's be real here. Like when you're going through the motions and your team is out of it, there's very few players that are elevating their game to the best level just because the team isn't that good. Just, that's
well, most
truth.
people don't have that ability to even get to the best level.
Yeah, that's the
even if they want to. He's like, yeah, I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to be a Norris Trophy winner. Like, come on, who can do that?
Not many guys, that's for sure. Well, let's welcome in Tyler Yaremchuk for another edition of Buy or Sell.
Yes, it is another edition of Buy or Sell here on a Monday morning. And as always, it's delivered by our friends at DoorDash. Rundown DD, that's the promo code, 25% off, no delivery fees on your first order. And let's start with this. You guys were talking about the Heritage Classic, and it's become a bit of a unique tradition in the NHL to have the two teams sort of dress up for their entrance to an outdoor game. The Buffalo Sabres dressed up as the Flint Tropics from Semi-Pro. The Toronto Maple Leafs dressed up as Steelworkers. Are you buying on both? Buying on one, selling on the other, selling on both? What do you guys think, Frank?
I don't know. I thought it was embarrassing for the Leafs. I just it felt like you took something that had kind of been cool and organic, and it felt like a sponsored item. Like they were tagging Stelco, the company who clearly gave them the hats and maybe even the uniforms. Was this a sponsored gig? Like, was this something that it just felt pre-planned, not fun, not interesting? Like all the other ones at least had a funny element to it. Like the Leafs just look goofy. And on top of that, they're not a hard team. I'm sorry, the Leafs, you're not Steelworkers. You're just not.
So you're selling on the Leafs, buying on the Sabres?
Yeah, I mean, semi-pro Sabres sounds about right.
Well, who doesn't like the Flint Tropics, man? It's hard not to like it. You're going with the short shorts and, you got the muscle shirts and the headbands. I thought they played the role well. I look at Toronto and I think that they were appealing to where they were playing, right? And so they took a more serious approach to it, I think, than maybe the fun-loving approach a lot of the other teams do. And so that's why it looked different. And I kind of get the sense that, that's kind of where the Leafs organization is. Now, this one was supposedly, and I would agree, I think it's the players. They're the ones who decide what they're going to wear. I don't think that they're going to be, I would hope they're not told by management. And so they went with a different, maybe more serious tone. I didn't mind it, actually. It kind of fits in. It was interesting looking at, because there are some guys like that just, to be like the construction hard, get your hands dirty type of person, to see some people who play a high level sport, who are very gifted athletically, but who most of them just don't fit that persona. I found it actually quite funny, because you're looking at them like, I'd be curious how many of those guys have ever worn like, work gloves and coveralls. So that part I didn't mind, because I'm just like, it shows you maybe how different of a world the two sides truly are. But I didn't have that much of an issue with it. I thought it was kind of it was a different spin. It wasn't comedy. They tried to go a little bit more representing where they're playing. And it's not keep in mind, Hamilton, there's lots of Hamilton fans who aren't Toronto fans. So I think they're trying to win over some Hamilton fans.
All right, second one we got here. Last season, in the week leading up to the deadline, there was a total of 16 deals, but 8 of them happened the day before the deadline. So that means in sort of the first 6 days of that final week, there was only 8 trades. It's quiet, so I'm going to say between now and Saturday, it's under 8 trades in the NHL. Jason, you buying or selling on that?
Oh, yeah, I'd buy for sure. I think every day matters right now for cap space, honestly. And I think teams are waiting. And I could see, a few deals trickle in on Saturday, but that still leaves me Sunday and Monday, correct? So it's under 8. Yeah. So I'll take under 8 for sure before Saturday.
Yeah, I would take under 8 as well. I just think it's been quiet. I think teams kind of know what their marching orders are. They have a general idea on prices. And I really think there's a lot of buyers out there that are knowing that the longer they wait, the more those prices have to come down just by nature.
Fair, very fair. Last one I got for you for buy or sell. Of the 8 playoff teams in the Eastern Conference, 6 of them still own first round picks. So I'm going to do a little over under here. I'm going to set the line at 3.5 first round picks dealt by the contenders, the playoff teams in the East, of the 6 that own them. Frank, you buying or selling? It's everyone but Florida and Carolina own their first rounder this year.
Yeah, but are you including them trading a first round pick for next year?
That is a good point, and one I did not think of early on a Monday morning. No, I'll say trading just this year's first round picks.
Well, it's kind of a half-assed question because like Florida they're going to probably trade their first round pick, but it's going to be for next year. Like I'd be shocked if they don't trade their first round pick. So I would say if it's 3.5 and it's only this year's picks, Pittsburgh, no. Carolina, maybe. Rangers, probably. Washington, no. Boston, no. Boston, yes.
Ooh.
Toronto, likely. So I'm going to say under.
Under. Okay.
3.5.
Yeah, I'm going under too. I don't think like Tampa. I guess Tampa could again, but I kind of get a sneaking suspicion they won't. And the Rangers, I'm not sure why the Rangers would at this point. I'm not sure the Rangers are ready yet to push all in. I wouldn't do it. So I will say under in the East, excuse me.
When I said Rangers, just to clarify, it would only be for a player with term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, let's wrap it up with the PointsBet bonus question. Our friends at PointsBet Canada were all over the Brier this year. I don't know if you guys saw the final, but it was a hell of a draw between Brad Gushu and Team Alberta and our friend Ben Hebert. But the PointsBet bonus question, there's just one game in the NHL tonight. It's an absolute barn burner between the Senators and Coyotes. Two rebuilding teams. Which one is busier at the deadline, the Yotes or the Senators? Frank?
Senators.
Like Arizona's, I'm going to go, like, I'm fascinated to see, like, does Phil want to leave? You know, they just had their baby. Maybe now it's easier to leave. I don't know. But I don't think that Arizona is trading Chychrun. I'm not sure how many other legit, like trading for Jamelka doesn't make any sense to me either. Like at some point you want to build good players, keep your good players for goodness sake. So I get why other teams would want them. And I get why their names are out there, but and if I'm Ottawa, like they got to re-sign their guys, but I'll say Arizona simply because they've always been with Arizona's busy. Cause I think Arizona is going to be involved, Frank, as far as harboring money for teams.
Yeah. I just think, when I'm looking at the Sens, like Nick Paul is, I would say, a 90% chance to be traded unless there's some kind of crazy movement here. I would say there's probably someone that'll take a flyer on Zach Sanford. Someone should step up to get Anton Forsberg, provided that the price is reasonable. There's a chance Michael Delzato moves because he's cheaper to trade than to buy out.
Yeah, there's a list there.
Chris Tierney, I mean, like what's going on with him? Is there a chance he's healthy? I don't know. Victor Mete, are they going to want to pay him his ARB number that's due as a restricted free agent? I don't know. I just think there's a lot the Sens could do if they want to.
Makes sense. All right, that's going to be a wrap on what was maybe a half-ass edition of Buy or Sell delivered by DoorDash.
Victor Mete, like I'm not sure Victor Mete has any grounds to stand on right now, unfortunately. So it will be it'd be interesting to see, Frank. I want to ask you a fun one. Of all the teams we look at, is there a team that you see being? Two-part question. A, who's your surprise team? Either good, bad, does nothing, or maybe does more than we think. And then B, is there a team that you think is going all in? Who's going to be the most active in the next week?
I think Florida is going to be very active.
Okay.
I
like it. That's my Stanley Cup pick, Frank. I'm agreeing. I like it. That was my start of the season pick, and I still like him.
This may totally come back to bite me in the ass. I don't think Carolina is that active. And maybe that's a surprise to some people given where they've been. And I keep coming back to Toronto. Like maybe the prudent play really is to do nothing.
I think the Colorado Avalanche are going to be rather active this week.
Well, they got some space now with Landeskog out, right?
Yeah. So I think Joe Sakic's won the cup. He knows how hard it is to win. I think he looks at his team and like you're not going to get what he got 2 years left of Nathan McKinnon, where you have a player who far exceeds his salary cap, and that's just such an advantage. I think you got to take advantage of it. So
here's another question for you. Claude Giroux plays his 1,000th game as a Flyer on Thursday night, St. Paddy's Day.
Yep.
Friday night, they're in Ottawa, his hometown. Well, where he's made his hometown. Does he play the game in Ottawa, 1,001 with the Flyers? Or is he traded? Does he go on the trip? Does he sit out as asset protection? How does it work? What do you think? Give me your prediction.
I think he's going to play. I think he's going to want to play that game, Frank. If it's in another city, they might have asset managed him, but I think
it's in Ottawa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he plays for sure. Pretty unique, for a guy play your 1,000th game at home in Philly, and then 1,001 is in kind of your hometown. That's pretty sweet.
Does he make it to Sunday though, home against the Islanders?
Now that one I could see him resting. Right, I could see them possibly sit him out. It was interesting his comments where he said, "Man, I got to make a decision." So it sounds like a lot of this is on Claude Giroux too. Like, do you really want to go?
It is because they could come to you and say we want to trade you, and he could just say buzz off.
Yeah,
he doesn't need to be traded.
No,
that's why it really is his decision. He could just say, you know what, I'm really comfortable here, and I want to just play out the string.
Yeah. If I'm Claude Giroux, why would you do that? Like,
no, I agree with you. I think you only get so many opportunities in your career to do it. But just because you and I feel that way doesn't necessarily. I still think for the betterment of the team and the organization moving forward, they need this pick. They need these assets to try and get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Claude Giroux over the next 7 weeks for the Philadelphia Flyers doesn't help them.
No,
really.
No, not at all. And actually trading him probably helps them because then they maybe fall down the standings and get higher draft lottery odds too. So,
well, they're doing that all on their own, so they can't hold a lead to save their lives.
Frankie, we will be back on Friday, man. I think it might be the calm before the storm, but leading up to the trade deadline, I think once it starts, it's going to be rather busy, which will be great. Have yourself an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.